those who are here on the stage already. Thank you for your support. For those who are watching us online, this is 5G Techritory, and we are getting to the last two panel discussions on policies and strategies. There is another stage also next to this one, and that is innovations and technology, and everything goes parallel. What you can do, you can take part also discussing on what you are hearing. You can go to the platform and make comments, suggestions, objections, and discuss it there. If suddenly there is a question and you know the answer, write it down and help people to understand things better. Then we have some activities, like you can gain some points on the platform, and at the end there will be a very nice souvenir from Latvia's mobilized telephones, a very symbolic one, and it is already there waiting for the winner. So now let's go to Open Run, which continues to be among the most hotly debated topics in the industry. And today we also discussed it on the defense panel. So proponents will point out the potential of lower costs, more innovation, and increase of local manufacturers. Then other side presents those who highlight the potential security risks, as always, and regulatory challenges of Open Run. So in any case, it's clear that this technology cannot be implemented by one actor, as all the others, as we have found out during these 2 days. So let's talk about the ecosystem of Open Run. And we have a very special guest as a moderator. Why? Because there are some senior speakers on 5G Techritory, and Professor of University of Patras, Ioannis Tomkos, is one of them. Please welcome warmly.
Thank you very much. I would like to welcome you at this session. We have great panelists today to discuss one of the hottest topics, a big hype in the industry, Open Run. We will need to understand, of course, why this is the case, if it is rightly so, and how actually we can move towards the deployment of Open Run for the benefit of all of us, our economies, and the customers we're serving with these networks. So I'm very happy that we have some nice panelists that are world experts on the relevant topics. Two of them will join remotely. The other two are here with me at the panel stage. So the speakers who are joining remotely, I will introduce them. We have Peter Stoopman, who is Deputy Director for the Future Networks Unit at the European Commission, a policy maker defining where things are moving towards. And we have also with us John Baker, again joining remotely, Senior Vice President of Ecosystem Business Development of Open Run leader Mavenir. And with me at the stage, we have Slavomir Pietrzyk, who is the CEO and founder of IS Wireless, one of the innovators on this Open Run ecosystem, and also Paolo Campoli, who is the Vice President for Global Service Providers Market of Cisco. So I would like to ask for a short opening statement from each one of you in the order that I introduce you, with the goal to identify from your side what is the main point you would like to bring forward as a key topic for our discussion. Of course, there will be others, and we will discuss them later. So let's start with you, Peter.
Many thanks, dear colleagues. Thanks a lot for having me online and give some viewpoints from a government perspective or from European perspective. So we as governments, we are of course following Open Run with interest. For us, it's mainly a technology trend. And we are of course interested also to see how it will shape supply markets in the future. Yeah, we are quite sure that the future will be software-based of these networks, cloud-based. The transformation of the sector of the technology and the companies goes towards IT companies, and this has started since a while. So we're watching that since quite a while already. So it's important that we have opportunities for this tech development, for the ecosystem development. Also in our partnerships, for example, the new 6G partnership, Smart Networks and Services partnership, to make sure also that European players, established and new ones, are part of this and will be leading these developments. We see that in a broader context. If you move to software-based networks, it could of course make sense to think about opening interfaces. We have of course already open interfaces in 3GPP standards. It's not something new. I mean, the industry is working in the standardization to define interoperability so that things work well together. Think about a handset and a network. They have to communicate, so there need to be interfaces which are well defined. But you can then also go a step further and say, okay, which kind of interfaces could be further open to make it even more modular? And this is, I think, what Open RAN is about. The concept exists for a while. It has gained a lot of interest. It's accelerated also by government support in cases where governments see opportunities, maybe also for their industrial players. I mean, in Europe, we still have two suppliers, and we're happy with that, two of the three main suppliers. There are other regions that think they also would be part of that game, and of course then also see that as an opportunity. So then, of course, the operators, as was mentioned in the introduction, have also an interest here to drive innovation and also to look at the cost side and hope that there might be some opportunities to reduce equipment costs. So we have done a number of things already. So if you're interested, last year there was a study published called 5G supply market trends. There you see a bit the scenarios, the opportunities, the risks. And then talking about the risks, then of course we need to talk about security. And there was a report published beginning of the year by the so-called NIST Cooperation Group, Network Information Security, where the Commission is also part of that group, where we have seen quite a good report summing up all the different risks and also possibilities to address these risks. So I think this is also something to take away. In this ecosystem, we have to work together on the issues to make the technology more mature, to also address some potential issues like performance, efficiency, but also security. So, and then we have platforms also to do that. We have the Smart Network Services Partnership. There are certainly opportunities for the industry to come together and work together on future developments. We have also the Digital Europe program, where we have now launched a call, for example, for pilots also at European level. Also together with the member states, also maybe to address the security issues together. And then finally, also the CEF program, Connecting Europe Facility, where we have 5G deployment funding, where also once mature Open RAN solutions could be part of that. There we have the 5G corridors, especially to mention, and the 5G communities. So that is an introduction, and looking forward to the discussion.
Very good, excellent. Thank you so much. So certainly, Open RAN encompasses a set of, let's say, technology elements, but it's really a movement that started by the industry itself, and of course now is embraced by policymakers and regulators. And one of the key drivers in this movement, let's say, that is growing rapidly, is Mavenir, and in particular a key figure there, John Baker, who is with us at the panel. So I would like to ask John to talk a bit more about this movement, how it evolves, what is the current situation, how many Open RAN deployments exist, what is expected to be the future of Open RAN, and of course later on we can debate if indeed all the expectations we currently have for Open RAN can become a reality in the years to come, and when that is expected to happen. So John.
Yeah, thank you, and thanks for having us on the panel today. Yeah, just as further background, I also sit on the board of the Open RAN Policy Coalition and the board of 5G Americas. So really sort of playing a global role in how global policy gets defined. The Open RAN Policy Coalition has got 60 plus members, and also you're doing strategic work for the Quad forum, which is the US, Australia, Japan, India forum that's going on and working between governments such as DCMS and the European government, etc. But a lot of activity there. I think, really to start with, the Open RAN journey started 5-6 years ago with really some pressure from operators to actually get more choice of vendors in the marketplace. As the market's consolidated over the years, we've been left with 2 vendors, and certainly from the US perspective, the market was left with a really serious issue with trusted suppliers, and the fact that you couldn't swap out individual components of the network. You had to rip the whole network out to essentially replace a single component from a different vendor. So it really sort of left I think a sort of a bad taste in very, very much in the industry, and to that extent operators got behind. It was XRAN, then the O-RAN Alliance, and the O-RAN Alliance is sort of really driving the specification work on filling in the interface specifications that come from ETSI or 3GPP that don't have a complete definition. So the work started with the front haul interface, and then filled that out to the extent that you can actually now interwork radios and baseband units from many different manufacturers, and also extended it to other interfaces in the network, because I think Peter mentioned about interfaces being open and interoperable, and certainly and I know it's part of the formation of 3GPP back in the 80s, when it really started, and the founding principles or founding fathers of 3GPP really talked about open interfaces and ensuring open interfaces. But over time, certain interfaces really sort of became proprietary from a detail perspective, and it's not so much about the fact that there's an interface defined. It's about the detail of what's in that interface to allow different manufacturers to actually interoperate their equipment. The great thing about the 3GPP journey is that the interface specifications within the core of the network have been open and kept open, for vendors to really compete in the marketplace. And the core side of the network has really been sort of been competitive, and Mavenir as one of those competitors is sort of competing on a level playing field with all of the major suppliers for the core of the network. But as technology evolved, and I think this is one of the areas that standards and specifications sort of struggle with, is as technology evolves and components get disaggregated, it's that really how do the standards processes keep up with that disaggregation and ensure that it doesn't become a vendor lock situation as we've had in the RAN over the last 10 plus years. So that's sort of a little bit of the history on that. O-RAN Alliance sort of really picked up and has really done a lot of the good work in terms of filling in the specifications, and those specifications are now in the process of being adopted by 3GPP in that process. So it's great to see new specification groups coming up and being able to participate in the bigger ecosystem. As far as the journey of Open RAN is concerned, that trials started probably 3 years ago with some very early systems going into place, but momentum has picked up, and I think from a Mavenir perspective, we have over 50 trials and deployments going on a global basis, pretty much on every continent in the world in some form. But most notably, I think Dish has got a US statewide deployment going on, which will be probably 60 to 70,000 sites over the next 3 years. And they have legal obligations to meet in terms of coverage, but that's a true Open RAN network, that's true multi-vendor, and Dish are really upholding the principles of ensuring that vendors work together. So from that perspective, it's there's a lot of activity going on. Yes, Open RAN is happening as much as detractors in the marketplace try to throw up challenges, such as security and others. But in reality, the whole security debate is there's no difference with Open RAN as there is with any other element in the network. It's all based on a zero trust principle, and that's really the philosophy. And there's been so many reports put out on the security, and I think there's 3 other reports since the one in Europe was published that really all saying the same thing. Follow zero trust principles, ensure networks are designed for security from day one, and design it into the products, and not use it as an afterthought. And to that extent, I think the community is really sort of settling down in this whole security discussion. And although every now and again it sort of raises above the parapet, but there's been reports published. I know the FCC is in the process of releasing reports as well. So so there's a lot of good work going on, and I think it's great to see that that we're now looking at what's inside the elements from a security perspective, and really applying the zero trust principles. In terms of TCO and stuff like that, the TCOs are actually being proven now. So we're seeing the benefits of Open RAN. We're seeing the benefits of new interfaces to allow elements like the RIC get in there for energy consumption, etc., etc. But I think the major discussion that we're still pushing is really that how the standards really evolve in the future to ensure that interfaces stay open where necessary, and we avoid vendor lock in the future. So we end up with a global competitive market, rather than being locked down to a couple of vendors that may have problems, and may be lacking in innovation, etc., etc. So I think that's the major point of discussion. But I think the message clearly is Open RAN is happening. That operators are engaging, but it's not a revolution, it's an evolution, and it's an evolution of the specification standards process as well as the technology that goes with it.
Thank you very much, John, for presenting us the history and motivation of Open RAN. You touched upon the expected opportunities and benefits, but also you mentioned about the challenges like security, which is a big concern for several people in the industry. However, we need to understand really what are the problems that Open RAN tries to solve. Is it really about performance improvements and cost reductions and fostering innovation, like one side says, or is it about the transformation of the market to exclude eventually some market players and enable the emergence of newcomers? I know this is a controversial question, but I believe at this panel we need to discuss also this. And I would like to hear the opinion of our panelists that are attending here with physical presence. So, Paolo, first, let me ask you, how confident you believe is today a system integrator or Cisco to work with multiple providers of Open RAN solutions to offer and deploy a network for an end user and an operator, having to sign SLAs that guarantee the proper operation and the proper offering of the services? Are we at the stage that we can say that we will move on without problems?
Look, Open RAN is, at the end, is another form of disaggregation, right? I mean, disaggregation is happening wherever there is a profit pool that is in the hand of a vertical stack and the technology allows to decompose it, it happens. It happened to us in the routing business, multi-billion-dollar business. We've been disaggregating hardware, software, component, pluggables, silicon, optics, everything, right? At the beginning, it's painful. At the end, becomes also very, very healthy because, at the end, it's good business for us. We're selling more. It's happening in radio, in open radio. Probably it was the last bastion, the last castle that was still vertically integrated. There is an effort there to make Open RAN, to make networks and data center Open RAN ready. So that is happening because it's foundational. You need to design the network, you need to design it for front haul, mid haul, back haul, for CPRI or eCPRI transport. You need to design the data center, which is a different beast than the classical data center at the very edge of the network. You need to think about how you transport timing, 1588. You need to think about how you orchestrate and automate. So there is a lot of heavy lifting to be done. But it's happening, and I agree with Mavenir 100%. It's unstoppable. The concern are actually on three fronts. One is exactly disaggregation by definition requires an extra effort to keep things consistent without making them proprietary again, right? Which is a dichotomy per se. On the one side, you want to have the Lego block, but the Lego block is a very nice abstraction. It's not very, very real when it comes to complex systems. So how do you limit the number of permutation to really create an integration that is affordable from a cost perspective? That question is not still completely answered.
So essentially, how open Open RAN is currently, and how open it will be, or will be in the future. This is, I believe, a key question. Probably we can have the opinion of our panelist Slavomir from IS Wireless. I think you have been promoting the concept that Open RAN is not as open as it should be. So perhaps you can tell us why you believe so.
Well, I think that what has already been said, that everything evolves. So the concept of openness and this direction also evolves. I also agree, it's the old concept. It happens always when the certain area of industry gets to the wall of development and wants to push. And of course, we've been observing that in the telecoms that the traffic rises almost exponentially while the revenues from the networks, they saturate. So we have a gap that needs to be kind of solved. And it's not enough just to provide a new radio interface to solve that gap. You need a new business model. So the openness is a new business model actually. Now, and as this evolves, what would be the potential direction for evolvement where we could propose a new value or a new added value for the ecosystem? And is this more openness? That's another question. So, well, I think that there is a place for more openness. We are all observing the pioneers of Open RAN. We have Mavenir here. We have also other examples like Rakuten. And the point that I would like to make is that there are two sides of the table, of this dealing table. The supply side, it gets somehow disaggregated, but not too much. And there is a demand side, so the operators. Now, the operators right now, those that are offering massive markets, are used to the luxury of having everything provided as a turnkey solution. And that, in my opinion, sort of determines how the pioneers are behaving right now. And whether they want it or not, they are behaving similar to closed RAN vendors. So maybe that's not their intention, but the customers sort of push them to behave like that. And there are some consequences. For example, when you deploy a network, let's say the 5G greenfield network, the first thing you typically think about is the coverage. So you think about sites that are macro, that are large sites. You are utilizing localizations that are there. But in a longer run, of course, coverage, is not that important. Especially in those inhabited places, you've got plenty of coverage for services. So you need capacity. That's what the core of the public connectivity is, in capacity. Now, capacity can only be provided when you densify your network. Of course, there are other means. You can add carriers, you can go with higher order of MIMO, but the best effects are given by densification of a network. Which is sort of difficult right now because the site acquisition process is lengthy, painful, and so on. So when an operator has a localization, he or she exploits it ultimately. So we have a push towards massive MIMO, which that is maybe a bold statement, but I think it's wrong because ultimately we will need to densify. So we should better start to look for models where we engage localizations that are all around, find ways to connect them and exploit them, shorten this painful process of acquisition of a site, and deploy networks that have, by definition, more potential for the capacity. And that requires further level of disaggregation because apparently we will not build a base station with a dedicated cabinet. The problem would be more to kind of pour network functionality over the area where you have a localization here, a localization there. One comes from one partner, another comes from another partner. The same goes for computing. You have a bit of computer here, you have a bit of computer there, you have a cloud resources, you have edge resources, and some front haul, some connectivity is of course needed. Now, it cannot be provided by just installing a server somewhere here. I mean, then the problem is completely different. It is not what network you want to build for and what resources you need to purchase for a given, let's say, service requirements, but given service requirements, how you would utilize what's available well, in order to minimize the cost of deployment. And I'm sure that those numbers that are well known in the industry, claimed by Rakuten, this 40% of TCO reduction, that they can be really significantly lowered further by exploitation of further granularity and exploitation of resources that are available. And that's basically the field that we are promoting, and this is where we find ourselves.
Very good. And of course, this is another very interesting topic for debates, how the architecture of the networks should evolve, and of course, how Open RAN will come into play under this evolution. However, now that we have discussed and we had the first positioning from all speakers about issues, benefits, challenges, I would like to raise another issue, and I would like to hear the opinion of our panelists, first starting with Peter. One of the possible industry shifts that are expected because of the introduction of Open RAN is the strengthening of cloud software providers. And those are mostly based in USA and Asia at the moment. So while the current situation, in the current situation, we have major telecom equipment vendors located mostly in Europe and in China, at least the four major ones. So what do you think, Peter, can be an implication from the introduction of Open RAN on that front? Can we hope that Europe somehow, with funding that will be provided by the Commission, can take a leadership position in this new reality?
Yeah, thanks a lot for that question. It's very important. As I mentioned before, I mean, we see this this trend to cloudification, to softwareization. I think this is, well, unavoidable. It has, of course, a number of advantages in cost and innovation. So this is something that is ongoing when it comes to cloudification. And of course, we look at that with, well, one eye opportunity, one eye a bit of worry. I mean, we have, of course, the opportunity that we're well placed in the telecom sector with our suppliers. So we have to try to leverage our strength in Europe to expand this leadership, and then by that also catch up and jump on the next wave of innovation. So this is, of course, one perspective, and this is really something that we are trying to do with the Smart Networks and Services partnership. It's not only about Commission paying this at the end. The game is much bigger, and it's about industry strategies and then investments by the big players, and by the small players, and by the ecosystem, as we call this panel. So this will be important. Then, of course, when it comes to when we say and it's one of the risk scenarios in the Open RAN study that we did, the risk of the hyperscalers take over. I mean, we already see cooperation in the telecom sector. I mean, there is certainly some room for cooperation, and there will be some areas where certainly the hyperscalers have their role to play, and they will be part of the game. But it will be important also for Europe to keep position in this area, and there we look at the data strategy of the Commission and also the Cloud Alliance that we launched. So we make a number of efforts here to also have our capacities in this field. Maybe to conclude on this issue of cloud, it's indeed also pointed out in the NIST security report that when it comes to dependencies, I mean, on the one hand, you can say, okay, Open RAN, we bring in a lot of new players, so we'll be less dependent. Okay, but when we disaggregate and we move everything to common off the shelf, then there might be new dependencies in the broader value chain. Think about, okay, one panelist just said everything is disaggregated, everything is more competitive, but if you look at the chips, there is not the case. I mean, we see here in some markets, we have one player, one takes it all, or maximum two. In the cloud area also, there's a lot of concentration. So here, that will be also one of the points that we will look into, and member states, when they look at Open RAN and how to advance this, that we don't run into new dependencies. So these things are certainly linked, and we have to find a way not to sit that out and say this is something that we're blocking, for certainly not, but we have to move in a way forward that is best for Europe, and that we can indeed have an outcome for consumers, for the economy, for our sovereignty at the end of the day, to also have initiatives here and drive this in the right way.
Fantastic, Peter. Very reassuring. I hope that all the plans of the Commission will be realized and will bring Europe at the forefront. I would like to go back to John and ask, based on his experience and know-how, what are the conditions that enabled in certain markets Open RAN to be successful so far? And can we, let's say, adopt those conditions or support them in order to have such evolution faster in other countries?
Yeah, good question. I think, I come back to sort of the principles of Open RAN. The Open RAN is sort of about vendor diversity and interoperability. And I think those two key points are the foundation of the industry really going forward. That, I've seen in my travels and participation in the various government activities and forum around the world that, countries are very much looking at how to re-establish telecommunications as part of the country ecosystem. And to that extent, this is why Open RAN has become such a hot topic, that, countries are looking at, how they participate and, where they invest. And, we're seeing this with the CHIPS bill that got passed in the US for, a couple of $1 billion of investment into Open RAN, the UK, investing, hundreds of millions of dollars for the same. So, it's become a nationalistic agenda, if you like. Now, the one thing I would say is that the last thing that certainly I or a number of others would like to see is, the whole 3GPP ecosystem fall apart. I think, it's important that we keep the 3GPP principles of open and interoperability from an end-to-end perspective, because certainly without scale, then it affects the end subscriber in terms of services and functionality. That said, it really comes back to the principles of making sure that specifications are open enough that people can compete and businesses can make choices. And I think this is why we're seeing this become such a hot discussion, is that up until really the Open RAN Alliance sort of grabbing hold of some of the specifications, things were being locked down, and we still see it today in some of the specification issues coming out that such as things like carrier aggregation in mobile networks. Today that is such a vendor locked issue again that we have to address that issue. But we have to get the industry to a point where companies can make choices, companies can place investments, and then to that extent countries can make choices and countries can make investments to compete in there as well, and really just to level the playing field for competition. And I think that's all the industry is asking for, is that we level the playing field. Vendors, suppliers, operators can make choices of what they want to do. And at the end of the day, operators can really say, look, I'm not going to go along with this multi-vendor approach. I just still want to buy it all from one vendor, and that's fine. What we really sort of need, shown to protect here, is the ability that if anything happens, then there are choices there such that operators are not boxed into corners, and we're not having to completely rip networks out of countries because of various geopolitical issues. So as I say, at the end of the day, there's a lot there, but it's really about how to keep this ecosystem on a level playing field to drive the ecosystem forward.
Thanks, John. Certainly, investments by the government and the industry will assist this ecosystem to thrive in the future. I would like to observe that besides, such a condition, which is, funding for such deployments and research on related topics, there are cases where Open RAN has been more successful when deployed over greenfield type of networks. So by newcomers, operators of public networks, or nowadays operators of private 5G networks. So I would like to ask Paolo about his experience, his company experience on the use of Open RAN in such type of private 5G networks.
Yeah, I agree on one point. I mean, the greenfield deployment has been the first one to come to reality. As we went public, we are part of the Rakuten deployment in Japan, Rakuten Symphony. I mean, Rakuten Symphony went public also on their suppliers in Drillisch 1 and 1. So transport is Cisco. We are in Dish providing the transport layer with integrating with the different radio suppliers, including Mavenir. When it comes to private 5G, the issue you see on Open RAN in macro, which is mainly about the brownfield coexistence, they tend to decrease in private 5G. Private 5G started with the notion of private 5G bubbles, so basically air gap systems that serve specific use cases, and now the demand is shifting way more to integrating those private 5G entities with the existing Wi-Fi, with the existing IT stack, with the existing policies and so on. And the reason is pretty simple. IT leaders in enterprise want to manage 5G as just another radio interface. They don't want to see the complexity of managing the core. They don't want to have isolated systems. So we see that merger happening faster than we thought. Call it a brownfield. It's probably a brownfield, but of a different level of integration challenge. Indeed. Compared with macro, of course.
Indeed. Thanks, Paolo. I would like to mention that yesterday I attended a very interesting session that was co-organized here in Riga by governments and organizations from the neighboring countries including Latvia, is the so-called 3Cs countries initiative to assist the whole region to become an epicenter of innovation for digital transformation. Big part of this policy target is the development around the Open RAN ecosystem in these countries, in this region. And Slavomir here is one of the key drivers for this initiative. So I would like to hear what are the plans and the upcoming actions from this initiative.
Well, the 3Cs initiative, that's a political agenda that is arranged and kind of scheduled with summits and meetings. And I don't want to talk much about politics, but I'd like to focus on the technology and why we think it is in line with also our plans. So, well, first, we've already observed that the telecoms, including RAN, gets softwareized. It is a software domain right now, but not exactly. I mean, there is a software piece, but still it's a very multidisciplinary domain. So in order to understand and build efficient RAN, radio access networks, you need to have specialists from the field of physics, radio propagation, digital signal processing, virtualization, and so on. Now, as a matter of fact, what was called and what is also still called Central and Eastern Europe is full of specialists in those domains. Also, we are very often at the top, or almost always at the top of the various contests in programming, and I mean not just Poles. I represent Poland, but there are also other countries. Now, I think that there are reasons for that. We share history, we share a certain attitude towards mathematics, towards science, and I think what was a source of problems some time ago is now as a source of strength for the region. That is why big players like those that Peter mentioned are organizing R&D centers in Poland or in other places of Europe. So our idea is to arrange this capital in a way that we can drive the innovation locally and come up with a new class of solutions that would solve our needs, but that could also work with our partners. Either transatlantic relations like with the US, with the UK, or Far East Asia. And I'm not talking about the China direction now. So this is very important for us. This multidisciplinary domain is very well fitting into the region, and this region, especially in those recent difficult months, share also the need for security, and we are really sensitive on this point. And security, that's the core element of the networking. Diversity was promoted. Take energy domain as an example, was promoted in the region long time ago. Diversity in energy sectors, how it happens, how it looks now, and how European countries that are strongly dependent on a single supplier suffer. That's invisible. That is visible right now. So we have all the means to put together solutions and in an open and inclusive collaborative way work for the benefit of the region and our partners and customers.
Very good. Investing in Open RAN is certainly important, but investing in human capital probably is even more important.
As a long-term investment, of course.
Indeed. So I believe we can hear questions from the audience that is attending here, and also the audience that is following the event over the internet. So if there are any questions, please, I see John Strand. Yes?
Thank you. Isn't it a problem for the Open RAN vendors that they don't have scale? You know, in this industry, you need to have scale to buy chips in. I heard John talk short time ago that the chip prices was too high. He was complaining over the chip prices, for instance. So isn't it a problem for all these small Open RAN vendors that they don't have the scale to compete with bigger vendors, which are right now deploying thousands or 10,000s of sites every month? If we look at the most optimistic numbers for Open RAN, then in 2025 or 2027, Open RAN will have a market share of less than 3% of the installed base, yeah?
Probably some of our panelists will disagree with the 3% number. I don't know if you want to comment.
I disagree completely. I mean, the AT&T and McKinsey predicted in the 1980 that there will be 900,000 mobile phones, and I think, and they were very much wrong. And I think that the very similar logics applies here. So we are a small vendor, so I can tell you how we are competing. Well, of course, the lower the price of the component, the better, but we don't have to compete right now with the big players on their ground. We find other battlefields to compete.
All right, any other questions?
Yeah,
Yes, over there. Oh, anything else to add? Yes.
John,
let me comment on the scale issue, because I think this one gets put out of perspective as well. Is that the Open RAN community actually has greater scale than the incumbents. If you take the R&D dollars that are being used for all the companies that are participating in Open RAN, then there's a terrific R&D expense and a resource expense, if you like, going behind Open RAN that's far greater than if you added the two major European incumbents together. So, again, I disagree with the statement about scale as well.
All right.
Yes, I would like to ask about the evolution, let's say, of the O-RAN and especially the alliance. For example, besides the security, whether, let's say, interoperability, for example, if like, let's say, to have a service portability of a particular NetApp from one O-RAN vendor solution to another one, whether do you think there is any issue, a challenge? Thanks.
Anyone would like to respond to this question? John, perhaps?
Yeah, so actually today, this week, actually, the O-RAN Alliance is closing out the next round of Plugfests. There's, I think in 5 countries for multiple locations, there's Plugfest going on around the world for interoperability testing of, I think, 40 vendors testing their elements, which includes RIC applications and radios, DUs, CUs, et cetera, So, interoperability is a key part of it. I think this goes back to how deep the standards go to prove interoperability. But I think, you'll see the results in the next few weeks coming out of the O-RAN Alliance that show that interoperability is truly possible and is being achieved as the Open RAN ecosystem develops.
Looking forward for that. So I believe there are no other questions. And another one over here. Can we?
The very last one, yes.
The very last one. Okay, thanks.
Hi, Dean Bubley. Question: how are we sorted for skills and people who can actually do Open RAN integration, deployment, test, operation? Yeah, are there enough sort of humans who understand Open RAN, whether it's in the industry, in integrators, or in operators, to have this at sufficient scale at the moment?
In this region, I believe there are. Probably we will hear that, but please.
Well, please.
I can tell you based on our experience when we faced the initial integration challenges, and we are not an Open RAN integrator, just to be 100% clear, but we came very, very close. I mean, the domain skills were scarce but still affordable. The cross-domain skills were really lacking because, I mean, as you correctly said before, it's a combination of radio frequency, cell site planning, radio propagation, quite often combined with software skills, not in the same people, but in the same center of excellence, workload onboarding, data center optimization, transport optimization. So that type of cross-domain skill set were very scarce. Is there a way to upskill and cross-skill people? Yes, there is, and vendors are very active in there. Is there a level of abstraction that allows to do more programmability rather than putting hands on the devices, yes, there is a level of abstraction. So I think there are mitigation effects, but that's a crucial problem.
Okay, then we have to take one from the platform. There is one. Okay. Any thoughts on using CBRS and Open RAN for private mobile networks? So one comment from there.
So for people coming from USA, where CBRS is...
Yeah, we have CBRS deployed today with Open RAN, so...
All right.
Okay.
What a nice ending to this one.
Well, quite short one. So I would like to thank the panelists, either those that are attending here in real presence or virtually, and of course all the participants, the audience online and in presence for their attention and the nice questions we received. Thank you very much, everyone.
And thank you, Professor, for moderating this one.